What would you do if you lost everything at 50 years old? Your business, your savings, your home, gone. That's exactly what happened to Robert Mitchell. For over 25 years, he built a successful construction company in Texas. People admired him. He had money, status, and success. Then one economic crisis destroyed it all. At 50 years old, Robert found himself bankrupt, alone, and working in a hardware store just to survive. Most people would have given up. But Robert made one powerful decision. He stopped focusing on what he lost and started focusing on what he still had. His experience, his skills, his determination. One small opportunity became another. A small consulting job became a business became a comeback. And 10 years later, the man who lost everything was standing on stage inspiring thousands of people. His message? It's never too late to start over. Tell me in the comments, if you had to start your life over today, what would be your first step? I read every comment, and your answer might inspire someone else. If this story motivated you, like this video, subscribe to the channel for more motivational stories, success journeys, personal growth lessons, and life-changing inspiration. Remember, your setback could be the beginning of your greatest comeback. Chapter 1: The Fall. At the age of 50, Robert Mitchell thought he had everything a person could want. Living in the thriving city of Dallas, Texas, Robert was the owner of a successful construction company he had spent more than 25 years building. His business employed dozens of workers, managed major commercial projects, and generated millions of dollars in revenue every year. From the outside, his life looked perfect. He owned a beautiful home in an upscale neighborhood, drove a luxury SUV, and enjoyed vacations with his family in places he had once only dreamed of visiting. People admired him. Young entrepreneurs sought his advice. Friends often referred to him as the definition of success. But life can change faster than anyone expects. When a severe economic downturn hit the construction industry, projects began disappearing one after another. Several major clients canceled contracts, payments were delayed, expenses continued growing while income shrank. At first, Robert believed the situation was temporary. "We'll get through this," he told his employees. But the months became years, the problems multiplied, loans became debt became a burden, the burden became overwhelming. Despite working harder than ever, Robert found himself losing control. One by one, he was forced to make painful decisions. Layoffs, asset sales, project cancellations. The company he had spent decades building was slowly collapsing before his eyes. Then came the final blow. The bank foreclosed on several company assets. His savings were wiped out. His business officially declared bankruptcy. The company that had once been his greatest source of pride no longer existed. A few months later, Robert sat alone in a small rented apartment on the outskirts of Dallas. The luxurious lifestyle was gone. The large house was gone. The financial security was gone. Rain tapped softly against the window as he stared at a pile of unpaid bills on the kitchen table. For the first time in his life, he felt completely defeated. At 50 years old, with his business destroyed and his future uncertain, Robert wondered if he had reached the end of his story. What he didn't know was that this devastating fall was about to become the beginning of the greatest comeback of his life. Chapter 2: Rock Bottom. The weeks following the bankruptcy were some of the darkest of Robert Mitchell's life. Every morning he woke up in his small apartment hoping the nightmare had been a dream. But reality greeted him the moment he opened his eyes. The business was gone. The money was gone. The life he had spent decades building had disappeared. For years, Robert's identity had been tied to his success. When people asked who he was, he proudly answered, "I'm the owner of Mitchell Construction." Now he didn't know what to say. Without the company, he felt lost, ashamed, broken. He stopped returning phone calls from old business associates. He avoided social gatherings. When former colleagues invited him to lunch, he made excuses. Deep down, he feared their questions. What happened? Are you okay? What's next? The truth was, he didn't know. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Robert spent most of his time sitting alone, replaying every mistake he believed had led to his downfall. If only he had planned differently. If only he had made better decisions. If only he had seen the crisis coming. The regrets felt endless. One afternoon, while organizing old boxes, he found a framed photograph from 10 years earlier. In the picture, he stood smiling beside a newly completed skyscraper project. Hundreds of workers had celebrated that achievement. At the time, he had felt unstoppable. Now, staring at the photograph, he barely recognized the man looking back at him. The confidence was gone. The energy was gone. The optimism was gone. For a moment, tears filled his eyes. He placed the photograph on a table and sat silently. That evening, he walked into the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. The reflection shocked him. His shoulders were slumped. His face looked tired. His eyes carried a sadness he had never seen before. For several minutes, he stared at his reflection. Then a difficult thought entered his mind. Am I going to live the rest of my life like this? The question hit him hard. He imagined himself 5 years older, still angry, still bitter, still trapped by the past. The image frightened him. For the first time, Robert realized that losing his business wasn't the biggest danger. The biggest danger was losing himself. Slowly, he straightened his shoulders. The problems hadn't disappeared. The debt hadn't vanished. His circumstances hadn't changed. But something inside him shifted. A small spark, a tiny voice, a reminder that he was still alive, still capable, still able to choose what happened next. As he looked into the mirror one last time, Robert made a quiet promise to himself. I may have lost everything, but I refuse to lose the rest of my life. That promise would become the first step toward an extraordinary comeback. Chapter 3: A New Beginning. The next morning, Robert woke up with the same problems he had the day before. The bills were still on the table, the debt still existed, his business was still gone. But something felt different. For months, he had focused entirely on what he had lost. Now, for the first time, he decided to focus on what he still had. After making a cup of coffee, Robert sat at the small kitchen table with a notebook and pen. The blank page stared back at him. For several minutes, he didn't write anything. Then he began listing everything that remained: his experience, his knowledge, his work ethic, his relationships, his problem-solving skills, his determination. As the list grew longer, Robert noticed something surprising. He had lost many things, but he had not lost everything. The most valuable assets he possessed could not be repossessed by a bank. No one could take away the lessons he had learned over 25 years. No one could erase the skills he had developed. No one could remove the resilience he had built through decades of challenges. For the first time in months, hope appeared. Small, fragile, but real. At the top of a fresh page, he wrote a sentence. Open quote, I am starting over, not starting from zero. Close quote. He stared at the words. The more he thought about them, the more powerful they became. Starting over meant beginning a new chapter. Starting from zero meant having nothing. And Robert knew that wasn't true. He still carried decades of experience inside him. That experience had value. The next few days were spent reflecting on his future. At first, his mind automatically focused on rebuilding the company he had lost. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized something important. Perhaps life wasn't asking him to rebuild the past. Perhaps it was asking him to build something new. Something better. Something wiser. One afternoon, while walking through a local park, Robert watched children learning to ride bicycles. Many fell, some cried, others got back up and tried again. As he observed them, a thought crossed his mind. Failure wasn't unique to adults. Everyone falls. The difference is that children expect to get back up. Somewhere along the way, many adults forget that lesson. That realization stayed with him. Instead of seeing his bankruptcy as the end of his story, he began viewing it as a difficult chapter. Painful, embarrassing, unfair, but still only a chapter, not the entire book. That evening, Robert created a simple plan. It wasn't ambitious. It wasn't complicated. It contained only 3 goals. 1, find stable income. 2, continue learning. 3, improve a little every day. The goals seemed almost too simple. Yet for the first time in a long while, he felt clarity. He didn't need to solve every problem immediately. He only needed to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. As he closed his notebook that night, Robert felt a quiet sense of determination. His circumstances had not changed, but his mindset had. And often, that is where every comeback begins. The following week, an unexpected opportunity would force Robert to swallow his pride and take a step he never imagined he would have to take. Chapter 4: The Humble Job. A week after creating his simple recovery plan, Robert faced a reality he had been trying to avoid. His savings were nearly gone. The bills continued arriving. And despite sending out dozens of applications, no high-level executive positions were available. For years, Robert had been the owner of a company. He had managed large teams, negotiated million-dollar contracts, made important business decisions. Now, at 50 years old, he found himself competing for jobs he never imagined applying for. The experience was humbling. One morning, while driving through Dallas, he noticed a Help Wanted sign outside a local hardware store called Parker's Home Supply. At first, he almost laughed. A former construction company owner working in a hardware store? The idea felt ridiculous. His pride immediately rejected it. You're overqualified. People will think you've failed. This is beneath you. But another voice spoke up. The voice that had been growing stronger over the past few weeks. Honest work is never beneath anyone. After sitting in his car for several minutes, Robert walked inside. The store manager, a friendly man named Tom Parker, greeted him. When Tom reviewed Robert's resume, his eyes widened. You owned a construction company for 25 years? Robert nodded. Used to. Tom studied him for a moment. Most people with your background wouldn't even apply here. Robert smiled slightly. A few months ago, neither would I. By the end of the interview, Tom offered him the position. The pay wasn't impressive. The responsibilities were simple. Stocking shelves, helping customers, managing inventory. But Robert accepted immediately. His first day felt strange, very strange. Instead of leading meetings, he organized tools. Instead of negotiating contracts, he helped customers choose paintbrushes and power drills. At first, embarrassment followed him everywhere. Several customers recognized him from his construction days. Some looked surprised. A few looked sympathetic. Each encounter tested his pride. But slowly, Robert's perspective began to change. He noticed that many customers came to him specifically because of his experience. They trusted his advice. Homeowners asked for renovation recommendations. Contractors sought guidance on materials and techniques. Without realizing it, Robert had become one of the store's most valuable employees. One afternoon, a young co-worker named Jake asked him a question. Robert, does it bother you? What? Starting over? Robert paused. A few months earlier, the answer would have been yes. Now he wasn't so sure. After thinking for a moment, he replied, It used to, but I've learned something. Jake listened carefully. No job is small if it's helping you move forward. The young man nodded thoughtfully. As the weeks passed, Robert developed a new appreciation for humility. For years, he had measured success by titles, income, and status. Now he was discovering another measure: character, work ethic, resilience. Every morning he showed up on time. Every customer received his best effort. Every task was completed with professionalism. Not because the job was glamorous, but because excellence is a habit, and habits don't depend on circumstances. One evening, after closing the store, Tom approached him. Robert, can I tell you something? Sure. I've hired a lot of people over the years. Tom smiled. But I've never seen anyone handle a setback with as much dignity as you. Those words stayed with Robert all the way home. For the first time since losing his company, he felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Pride. Not pride in his accomplishments, pride in his attitude. And while stocking shelves may not have looked like progress from the outside, something important was happening behind the scenes. Robert wasn't just rebuilding his finances, he was rebuilding himself. And soon a chance encounter with a customer would open a door he never expected. Chapter 5: Learning Again. As months passed, Robert settled into his routine at Parker's Home Supply. Every morning he arrived early. Every day he helped customers solve problems. And every evening he returned home to his small apartment. But something had changed. Instead of spending his nights regretting the past, Robert began investing in his future. One evening, while helping a contractor find materials, he overheard a conversation about new construction technologies. The contractor mentioned advanced project management software, sustainable building materials, and modern construction techniques that were becoming increasingly popular. Robert realized something surprising. The industry had evolved while he was busy running his company. Many of the tools and methods being used today didn't exist when he started his business decades earlier. At first, the realization bothered him. Then it inspired him. Instead of feeling left behind, he decided to become a student again. That very night, he purchased several books about modern construction management. He enrolled in online courses. He watched educational videos. He studied industry reports. Every evening became learning time. His apartment slowly filled with notebooks containing new ideas and observations. The process reminded him of his early 20s when he was hungry to learn everything he could. One night, while studying sustainable building practices, Robert smiled. He hadn't felt this curious in years. The bankruptcy had taken away many things, but it had also given him something unexpected, a beginner's mindset. He was no longer acting like someone who knew everything. He was becoming someone eager to learn. The more he studied, the more opportunities he noticed. New markets were emerging, new challenges were being created, new solutions were needed. And because he combined decades of experience with fresh knowledge, he began seeing possibilities others missed. One afternoon at the store, a customer named Sarah Collins came in looking frustrated. She had recently purchased an older property and was struggling with renovation decisions. After hearing her concerns, Robert spent nearly 30 minutes helping her understand the process. He explained materials, discussed costs, suggested practical solutions. By the end of the conversation, Sarah looked relieved. "You've been incredibly helpful," she said. "Thank you." Robert smiled, happy to help. As she walked away, he thought nothing more of it. But Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the advice he had given her. Unlike others she had spoken with, Robert seemed genuinely knowledgeable. And a week later, she returned to the store with an unexpected proposal. A proposal that would become the first real opportunity of Robert's comeback. The opportunity was small, the payment was modest, but it would prove something invaluable. His experience still had value, and his second career was about to begin. Nub Chapter 6: The Small Opportunity. The following Saturday, Robert was surprised to see Sarah Collins walk back into Parker's Home Supply. This time, she wasn't shopping for materials. She was looking for him. "Robert, do you have a few minutes?" she asked. "Of course," he replied. Sarah explained that she had recently purchased an older property on the outskirts of Dallas. The house needed extensive renovations, and she was struggling to find trustworthy guidance. "I've spoken with several contractors," she said. "Most of them seem more interested in selling services than actually helping." Robert nodded. He had seen that happen many times during his years in construction. Then Sarah asked a question that caught him off guard. "Would you consider consulting on the project?" Robert blinked. "Consulting?" "Yes, just helping me make decisions and avoid costly mistakes." For a moment, he didn't know what to say. It had been years since someone had hired him for his expertise. The opportunity was small, very small, but it represented something much bigger. Someone still believed his knowledge had value. After discussing the details, Robert agreed. The project would require only a few hours each week. The payment was modest, nothing life-changing. Yet as he drove home that evening, he felt a sense of excitement he hadn't experienced in years. The following week, he visited Sarah's property. The house was old, but full of potential. As they walked through each room, Robert carefully explained renovation priorities, budgeting strategies, and practical improvements. His years of experience immediately became useful. Problems that seemed overwhelming to Sarah were easy for him to identify and solve. By the end of the day, she looked relieved. "You've probably saved me thousands of dollars already," she said. Robert laughed. "That's the goal." Over the next few months, the project progressed smoothly. Sarah frequently recommended Robert to friends and colleagues. Soon another homeowner contacted him, then another, and another. The consulting jobs were small, but they kept coming. Each one brought a little extra income. More importantly, each one rebuilt his confidence. For years, Robert had measured success by the size of contracts and the number of employees he managed. Now he was learning a different lesson. Success often begins with small opportunities. Many people ignore small opportunities because they don't look impressive. Robert almost made the same mistake. Had he focused only on finding a large opportunity, he might have missed the one standing right in front of him. One evening, while reviewing his finances, he noticed something encouraging. For the first time since the bankruptcy, his income was growing. Slowly, steadily, but growing. More importantly, his reputation was growing too. Clients appreciated his honesty, his practical advice, his willingness to put their interests first. Unlike before, he wasn't chasing rapid growth. He was building trust, and trust was creating opportunities. Several months later, one of Sarah's business associates contacted him about a larger commercial renovation project. It was the biggest opportunity he had received since losing his company. As Robert hung up the phone after the initial conversation, he smiled. The project wasn't guaranteed, but it was proof of something important. The comeback had begun. Not with a huge breakthrough, not with a miracle, but with one small opportunity that he chose not to ignore. And that opportunity was about to lead to something much bigger than he ever imagined. Chapter 7. Building from Scratch. The commercial renovation project turned out to be a success. Robert approached it with the same mindset that had helped him rebuild his life. Focus on quality, solve problems, and earn trust. The client was impressed, not because Robert made grand promises, but because he delivered exactly what he said he would. When the project was completed, the client recommended him to several other business owners. Soon, Robert's phone began ringing more often. A warehouse owner needed consulting. A property investor wanted renovation advice. A small development company needed project management expertise. One opportunity led to another, then another. Within a year, Robert found himself facing a decision. His consulting work had grown so much that he could no longer handle it only during evenings and weekends. One evening after closing the hardware store, he sat down with Tom Parker. "I think it's time," Robert said. Tom smiled. "To leave?" Robert nodded. "I never expected to say this, but yes." Tom leaned back in his chair. "I knew this day would come." Robert looked surprised. "You did?" "Of course," Tom replied. "People like you don't stay down forever." The words touched Robert deeply. Parker's home supply had given him more than a paycheck. It had given him a second chance, a place to rebuild his confidence when he needed it most. On his final day, Tom handed him a small gift. Inside was a leather-bound notebook. On the first page, Tom had written, open quote, "Never forget where your comeback began." Close quote. Robert carried that notebook with him everywhere. As his consulting business expanded, he made a conscious decision not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Years earlier, his company had grown too quickly. He had focused on expansion more than stability. This time would be different. Instead of chasing size, he focused on service. Instead of seeking rapid profits, he focused on long-term relationships. Instead of trying to do everything himself, he built systems and processes carefully. The strategy worked. By age 53, Robert had established Mitchell Property Solutions, a boutique consulting firm specializing in renovation planning and project management. The business wasn't as large as his old company, but it was stronger, healthier, more sustainable. Most importantly, Robert was happier. One afternoon, while reviewing a new contract, he noticed something that made him smile. His annual income had finally surpassed what he earned at the hardware store. A few months later, it exceeded what he had earned during the final struggling years of his old company. The progress wasn't dramatic, it was gradual, built one client at a time, one relationship at a time, one project at a time. And because it had been built slowly, it felt solid. For the first time since the bankruptcy, Robert stopped worrying about whether he would recover. He knew he would. The evidence was all around him. His confidence had returned, his finances were improving, his future looked brighter than it had in years. But the greatest surprise was still ahead, because the business he had rebuilt from scratch was about to grow beyond anything he thought possible. And this time, success would mean far more than money. Chapter 8. The Unexpected Success. By the time Robert turned 55, his life looked completely different from the dark days following his bankruptcy. What had started as a few small consulting projects had grown into one of the most respected property consulting firms in Texas. Clients trusted him, investors sought his advice, developers valued his experience, and unlike the company he had lost years earlier, this business was built on stronger foundations. One morning, Robert arrived at his office and found an email waiting for him. The sender was a national real estate investment group. At first, he assumed they wanted a simple consultation. Instead, they offered something much bigger. The company was launching a series of large-scale renovation projects across several states and needed an experienced consultant to oversee the strategy. The contract was worth more money than Robert had earned in years. As he read through the details, he felt a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Just 5 years earlier, he had been stocking shelves in a hardware store. Now national companies were competing for his expertise. The opportunity was enormous. But unlike the younger version of himself, Robert didn't rush into the decision. He carefully reviewed every detail. He consulted trusted advisors. He considered the risks. Experience had taught him that success wasn't about moving fast. It was about moving wisely. Eventually, he accepted the offer. The project exceeded every expectation. Over the next 2 years, Robert helped guide multiple successful developments. His reputation spread throughout the industry. Industry magazines featured his story. Business podcasts invited him for interviews. Conference organizers asked him to speak about leadership, resilience, and rebuilding after failure. The attention felt strange. For years, he had hidden from people because he was ashamed of losing everything. Now people wanted to learn from his comeback. One afternoon, while preparing for a speaking event in Austin, Robert reflected on how much had changed. The financial success was impressive. His income now exceeded what he had earned before the bankruptcy. His business was thriving. His future felt secure. But something surprised him. Those achievements no longer felt like the most important part of the journey. The greatest reward wasn't the money. It wasn't the recognition. It wasn't even the business. The greatest reward was who he had become. The bankruptcy had humbled him. The hardware store had taught him gratitude. The rebuilding process had taught him patience. The setbacks had taught him resilience. Years earlier, Robert measured success by possessions. Now he measured success by growth. That evening, he stood before hundreds of entrepreneurs at a leadership conference. As he shared his story, the audience listened intently. When he described losing everything at age 50, the room became silent. When he explained how he rebuilt his life one step at a time, people nodded in understanding. And when he finished speaking, the audience rose to their feet in applause. For a moment, Robert simply stood there. Not because he was proud of the standing ovation, but because he realized something important. His greatest success wasn't recovering from failure. His greatest success was becoming the kind of person who could survive it. Little did he know, the next chapter would become the most meaningful of all. Because success had given him something new, the opportunity to help others rise after their own falls. Chapter 9, Helping Others Rise. As Robert's business continued to grow, something unexpected happened. People stopped asking him only about construction and business. Instead, they began asking about failure, about recovery, about starting over. Many of the entrepreneurs who contacted him weren't looking for financial advice. They were looking for hope. One afternoon, after a conference in Houston, a young business owner named Daniel Brooks approached him. Daniel looked exhausted, defeated, almost exactly the way Robert had looked years earlier. "Mr. Mitchell," Daniel said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," Robert replied. Daniel hesitated. "My company is failing." The words came out slowly. "I've lost clients. I'm drowning in debt. Every day feels worse than the day before." Robert listened carefully. The story sounded painfully familiar. Then Daniel asked the question that had haunted Robert years ago. "How do you know when it's time to give up?" For a moment, Robert remained silent. Then he smiled gently. "You don't." Daniel looked confused. "What do you mean?" Robert leaned forward. "When my business collapsed, I thought my life was over. I thought losing everything meant I had failed." He paused. "But failure isn't losing something. It's refusing to get back up." Daniel stared at him. For the next hour, Robert shared his story. The bankruptcy, the apartment, the hardware store, the small consulting jobs, the long road back. He didn't hide the difficult parts. He didn't pretend the journey had been easy, because it hadn't. But he wanted Daniel to understand something important. Recovery is possible. When they finished talking, Daniel's expression had changed. The fear hadn't disappeared completely, but hope had returned. And sometimes hope is enough to start moving forward. A few months later, Daniel sent Robert an email. His business had stabilized. He was rebuilding. Slowly, steadily, just as Robert once had. The message ended with a sentence Robert would never forget. Open quote, "You didn't just save my business, you saved my belief in myself." Close quote. That email changed something inside him. Over the following years, Robert began mentoring struggling entrepreneurs. At first, it was only a few people, then dozens, then hundreds. He launched workshops focused on resilience, leadership, and rebuilding after setbacks. His message was simple. Open quote, "Your worst chapter does not have to be your final chapter." Close quote. The message resonated. People connected with it because it was real. Robert wasn't teaching theory. He was teaching lessons learned through experience. One day, while speaking to a room full of entrepreneurs, he asked a simple question. How many of you have experienced failure? Nearly every hand went up. Then he asked another question. How many of you are still here? The room laughed. Again, nearly every hand remained raised. Robert smiled. Then failure didn't beat you. The room fell silent. You're still standing. Those words became one of his most quoted lessons. As the years passed, Robert realized something profound. Losing his company had been painful. Losing his wealth had been painful. But if those experiences allowed him to help others overcome their own struggles, perhaps they had not been wasted. Perhaps they had a purpose. And that purpose brought him more fulfillment than any business success ever could. By age 60, Robert had become known not only as a successful entrepreneur, but also as a mentor, speaker, and source of inspiration. Yet the most important realization of his journey was still waiting for him. A realization he would discover during a speech that marked the 10th anniversary of his comeback. A realization that would define the true meaning of success. Chapter 10, The Greatest Comeback. On a cool autumn evening in Chicago, Robert Mitchell stood backstage at one of the largest leadership conferences in the country. More than 2,000 business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs filled the auditorium. 10 years earlier, Robert had lost everything. Now he had been invited to deliver the keynote speech. As he waited to be introduced, he thought about the journey that had brought him there. The bankruptcy, the sleepless nights, the tiny apartment, the hardware store, the small consulting projects, the countless moments when quitting would have been easier. Every step flashed through his mind like scenes from a movie. Then he heard his name. The audience applauded as Robert walked onto the stage. For a few moments, he simply looked across the crowd. Thousands of faces, thousands of stories. Thousands of people fighting battles nobody else could see. And suddenly, he knew exactly what he wanted to say. He stepped toward the microphone. 10 years ago, he began, I lost everything I thought made me successful. The room became silent. I lost my company. I lost my savings. I lost my house. I even lost my confidence. The audience listened carefully. Many could relate. Many had experienced setbacks of their own. Robert continued, For a long time I believed success was about what I owned. The bigger the business, the more successful I felt. The more money I made, the more valuable I believed I was. He paused. And then life took all of it away. The room remained completely silent. But something unexpected happened. Losing everything forced me to discover who I really was. The audience leaned forward. Robert smiled. I learned that success isn't what you own. It's what remains when everything you own disappears. The words struck the room with powerful force. He spoke about resilience, about humility, about the lessons hidden inside failure, about starting over at 50 when most people thought life was winding down. Then he shared the most important lesson of all. Open quote, Your comeback begins the moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what can I do next? Close quote. The audience erupted into applause. Many people were wiping tears from their eyes. Others nodded as if they had finally heard exactly what they needed. As Robert finished his speech, he looked out across the room one final time. 10 years earlier, he thought bankruptcy had ended his story. Now he understood the truth. That chapter had not been the end. It had been the beginning. The audience rose to their feet. A standing ovation filled the hall. But Robert wasn't thinking about the applause. He wasn't thinking about the success. He wasn't thinking about the recognition. He was thinking about the man sitting alone in a small apartment 10 years ago, the man who believed his life was over. If he could speak to that version of himself now, he would say only one thing. Open quote, keep going. Your greatest years are still ahead of you. Close quote. As he left the stage, Robert felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not for the wealth he had rebuilt, not for the business he had created, but for the person he had become through the struggle. Because in the end, his greatest comeback wasn't financial, it wasn't professional, it wasn't public. His greatest comeback was personal. He had rebuilt his confidence, his purpose, his belief in himself, and that made all the difference. Moral of the story: no matter how much you've lost, no matter how old you are, and no matter how difficult your circumstances seem, you can begin again. Failure is not the end of your story. Often, it is the beginning of your greatest comeback.